Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Backscatter for sponsoring this episode. Backscatter Photo and Video are a shop based in Monterey, California, and they have a huge range of all the gear you might need as an underwater image maker, but also it's backed up with a lot of experience. The staff are all shooters, and they all both take photographs underwater and look after and can deal with potential problems with gear if you need them to. So backscatter.com, they work online as well. So check them out online. I'm joined by Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Adam. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Always a pleasure to see you. And what we thought we'd talk about today, Alex was looking a bit bored earlier, so I thought I'd try and find a subject that's really, really boring to entertain him with. And we thought we'd talk about how we keep track of our images once we've taken them. It's one thing taking them is really important, but obviously once we've taken them, it's important that we then can find them when we want to for whatever purpose we want to use them for. And certainly, obviously, build up big image libraries, that in itself can be a problem. So I think I'm right in saying that we're going to talk about Lightroom, aren't we, Alex?
Yeah. I think I'm not going to lie. It's not a very exciting subject for us to talk about. We could talk about sharks or, amazing camera gear, but instead we're talking about cataloging images. But I have to say that it's one of the most common issues that underwater photographers have, is that their pictures are in a mess. They can never find their pictures. And the whole point of all this conversation is for you to set up a system for your photos so that you can find your good pictures again. Because there's no point taking them if you can't find them to show anyone.
No, it seems crazy, spend a fortune on a camera and a housing and then traveling somewhere exotic, taking lots of beautiful pictures, and then you can never see them because you don't know where they are. That seems a shame, really. It's like
I think the dogs know where the postman is.
They're good at finding the postman. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
So it all starts by having, what you want to do is you need to decide on a system and try and keep with that system. And at the same time, if you have got existing folders, it can be worthwhile to go back and maybe move those into the same system so that, you keep everything consistent. Yep. So for me, that starts with, I actually keep all my photos in one Lightroom catalog, but I don't keep the files on the computer anymore. So my laptop actually has all my photos that I've taken since 2006 or 7 when I started using Lightroom in it. And it stays perfectly manageable. It's quite a big catalog file, but it fits on my computer very well. And I find that very useful because I teach a lot of underwater photography. It allows me, when I revisit a destination, to go and look through my catalog and see what I shot when I was last there, which can be very valuable if we are going to a dive site I've not been to for 10 years. I can stand up in front of the group and say, oh, yeah, this site is particularly good for this and that, and there might be this problem and this challenge, and think about this and that. And so I've got this, that's why I keep all my pictures on my computer. I don't necessarily recommend you do that. I don't keep all the original RAWs there. I just keep the original previews, and the catalog is not too big. It's not too ungainly doing that. But I divide all my trips into a parent folder of that trip, which is a destination folder, which I name with the destination and then the date, the year first, then the month, so that if I visit that destination more than once in a year, they'll come. And if I order them by alphabetical order, which is what Lightroom does, they get grouped together in destinations. So I'll have for example, Lembe 2013, Lembe 2015, Lembe 2018, one after another. And then if I went twice in a year, they'd also sit next to each other. So that's how I do my main folders. And then underneath each parent folder, I divide my pictures daily on the trip. I used to divide them by dive, but I just felt it was far too many subdivisions. Daily usually is 3 or 4 dives. They obviously sort separately on time, so they're easy enough to spot apart. And I do that, and I find that's a pretty good manageable way. We generally don't shoot more than 400 or 500 pictures in a day, and quite quickly I'll edit that down to a much smaller number.
So I work slightly differently, not a million miles away from what you do, Alex, in that I basically have a yearly folder, so 2022. And then each I have each folder, so I have a day's worth of images typically for each day, and that literally relates to it's filed in date order, so it'll be in reverse. So it'll be 2022-02-16 today.
Mhm.
Then it will say something like Lembe or the location. So but then I have a daily folder, and basically everything from each day goes in that folder. I don't differentiate. And actually, interesting, what I've done now is I've also started putting both underwater and surface shots, because quite often I'm doing quite a lot of both, in the same folder. And we'll come to how I work that in a minute. But that's so basically everything goes in. I don't differentiate by trips. I have one big master catalog that basically just goes by date in date order. And of course, because I'm doing it year, month, day, that means that they come up chronologically. And then I have a description on where it is. Now, obviously, if I'm shooting in two different locations, I could potentially have a situation where I'd have a folder on the same day with two different locations, but it's the same.
It's an unusual situation.
It would be an unusual situation. It would be, yeah.
I think the next factor that I think is important is also file naming.
Yep.
So I rename all my files on import.
Yep.
And I use the same file naming formula on all my pictures. And I think the aim for me is to have as short a file name as possible. That is always individual. So you don't end up, there'll be never any chance of you re-having a file with the same name again.
Yep.
And then that file name can stay with the file through its whole life.
Yep.
So I use a 3-digit, my file name starts with a 3-digit location code. So Lembe, as you just mentioned, would be LEM.
Yep.
For example, and Cayman is KAY. Just as examples. I then follow that by a year code to differentiate, because I return to the same direct destinations many times. So I follow that with a year code, which will be 22 at the moment.
Yep.
I then follow that by my initials, and that's just really because I know that people who've been on my workshops do use the same sort of structure as me, because they've seen the value in it. So that just means that all my file names also have an AM in them, just to differentiate them as my own. And then I follow that with a 5-digit sequence number.
Yep.
I'm not going to shoot more than 99,000 photos on a trip ever,
Yep.
even close. So that 5-digit number just covers that trip. I might visit the same destination more than once in a year, though, so it allows me that number to carry on up. And and so the 5-digit number is a 4-digit number wouldn't be enough, so 5-digit number is enough. So I start the trip on 0001, and it builds up during the trip.
Yeah.
And that's how I do my file naming.
Yeah. So I'm subtly different in that I work chronologically again. So I rename everything on import like you. And again, the first part of the naming template is the date in reverse again. And then all I put in terms of text, I put my name in, and this was a tip I got from Eric years ago, in that someone borrows your image and forgets to mention it, so it's somewhere in the metadata, which is sometimes a good thing. And then I use the camera's file name, its file suffix. So the camera comes up with a unique number for each image. It adds them incrementally, and I add that in as my last. So the chances of, even with two camera bodies, the chances of having them issue the same file number on the same day, it's very unlikely.
But most cameras only count to 4 digits, don't they?
No, mine's 6 digits.
Okay.
Or 7 digits. Now you've got me questioning myself, but certainly there's plenty of wriggle room. And so basically, again, that means they get imported chronologically. Now, I think the important thing here is consistency. Obviously, Alex and I have subtly different techniques, or subtly different ways of doing it, and we've got used to working within those systems. What's absolutely critical is you pick a system and you stick to it. And this is something you really want to consider as early as possible, because you don't want to be going back and trying to do this process down the line, because it's a nightmare. So pick a system, get one that works, and be consistent with that system the whole way through. And once you start changing things, then it becomes very difficult to find images.
But if you decide on a system and you already have a number of photos on your thing, you can go back and rename stuff back to that system if you want to. You could, it's very easy to rename files on a computer. So should you come up with a great system that you want to use, you can always revisit old trips and actually do batch renaming on them and sort things out, should you want to go over to that. The reason I like to start my pictures with a country code and a year code is obviously all pictures have time and dates embedded in them.
Yep.
So you can always sort a folder on your computer by date created. So I don't feel the need to put the time or date into my picture because I can find that it's already embedded in the folder. What I like about using the country code is I can just sort a folder on file name, and it might have pictures from lots of trips all mixed up in it. And those pictures will fall naturally into trip order, and they'll also fit into destination chunks. So
Yep.
if I have a load of process files in a folder and I sort on name, all my pictures from the Maldives will all be there together, even if they're taken over a 10-year period. But they'll clump by year because the file name starts with MAL and then is followed by a number code.
Which brings me neatly onto the second part of our discussion, which is keywords, because that's the second part of what I do.
Before we get into that, I just want to very briefly wanted to mention another fact I think is really important, is delete your rubbish pictures.
Yeah.
Because the more pictures you have knocking around, the harder it is to find the good things. And the whole point of this whole process is to be able to find those good pictures.
Yeah.
So deleting the rubbish pictures is a great way of stopping there being so much dross around that you can't find the good stuff.
No, and you're very good at this. I'm less good at it than you, but yeah, certainly getting rid of the stuff you're never going to look at again is very important. Keywording. So what I do is on import, I will keyword images, and I don't try and keyword. They're general images. So on a trip, for example, geographical locations, normally some kind of mnemonic, Lembe 2019 or whatever it may be, and those go in on every image. Equally, for example, ones that are shot on the surface will have a surface keyword added. Those are shot underwater will have an underwater key. And there's lots of other keywords, but there'll also be geographical locations, fresh or salt, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed actually that Lightroom in its new version is not as friendly for doing keywords.
No, I agree, yeah.
I've actually found I've had to keep a folder in Word on my desktop during the trip with all the keywords in to copy and paste in each time, because it's really hard to copy and paste pictures from Lightroom. And also I find Lightroom doesn't seem to learn new keywords as well as it used to. No, you put a new keyword in and it doesn't seem to get added to the keyword catalog. It's only the new Lightroom, so I haven't had a chance to figure out why it's going wrong. So it's not quite as friendly as it used to be. And I need to watch some tutorial videos from someone who to explain why it's not working quite so well for me.
But
sorry.
What I would then do when I'm trying to find an image, I then would narrow it down primarily by using keywords within Lightroom.
Yeah.
So I would then, if I want to find a picture of Lembe, and I can, obviously there's all sorts of options within Lightroom in the way we can search the catalogs, including camera models, lens choices. So if I'm shooting macro, I don't bother to add a keyword saying macro. I just look for the lens, because there's no point in adding macro. It doesn't actually add anything. And so that's my primary tool for finding images, is to search my keywords. And I'm pretty religious about keywording. Now, when I start working on images, I start processing images. You've gone strange, Alex.
Yeah, my camera battery died.
When I start processing images, when I start actually dealing with images, then I will add additional keywords, which include things like species names. It'll include more specific things about techniques, so on and so forth. The goal being that those are things that I add later on. I don't add them to every image. I only add them to images that I'm likely to be using. That's my reason for doing it like that.
I'm back, Adam. Sorry about that. My webcam broke, so I'm back, stuck on the computer's inbuilt camera at the moment, but it's still me.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of add to that on the keywords, is that I'm pretty similar to you. I import on import, I add all those standard keywords. So I always include my name at that point, although it's being written in as the author of the file as well, and that sort of thing in the data on import. I also include my name and my website address in the keywords on all my pictures. I think that's a valuable thing for when they get off your own computer at any point. I then will add in all the destination stuff. So as an underwater photographer, that'll be country, region, nearest city, area,
Mm.
dive destination. I'll also add in any, marine park or national park stuff. A lot of the places we dive in are parks, and it's always good to promote that in your picture. So I'll make sure that's in my keywords. And I'll also enter any of the marine areas we're in. So if we're in the Atlantic Ocean, or if we're in the, the Caribbean Sea, or if we're in, the various, marine areas, it might be the Lembe Strait, but it might also be, the various seas. And sometimes you have to look those up because you maybe don't know what the larger area is called, but it's useful to put those into context and to add those to images. So that's what I put it in on import. And then, like you, as I refine that catalog down, I try to identify all the species in my pictures of the main subjects.
Yep.
And thankfully, I'm know my marine life pretty well, so most of the time I can do a pretty good job without the books. I can't spell all the Latin names, but thankfully, about probably 15 years ago now,
Probably, yeah.
certainly more than 10 years ago, Eric Cheng and Marty Snyderman, and maybe someone else was involved as well, created a collection, a downloadable set of keywords for Lightroom called Marine Life Keywords, in which they basically got all the keyword, all the common and Latin names from all the popular marine life ID books, put them all in one great big document, and made it downloadable into Lightroom. So
Yep.
I have that as my Lightroom catalog. Now, it doesn't cover everywhere in the world.
Yep.
It certainly doesn't cover British diving or Red Sea diving, as two common examples I need. But then over time, you can add your own keywords, and Lightroom used to remember them. I'm a bit worried that it doesn't anymore. But I need to understand those keywords, as I was saying earlier. But that list is really good. And the reason why it's so valuable to put that in Lightroom is that those keywords will stay with the file in every format that you export it in, as long as you don't at some point tell it to strip the keywords or the metadata from your picture. Those keywords will stay written in it. So it means, and that keyword format is a standard image format, which is not just searchable with Lightroom. It's, of course, very useful for Lightroom, but it's searchable in every other format, even in the general search directory of your computer, the search functions of Google online. You put an image online, that keyword information will be searchable online. And in fact, the library catalog that I use on my website, which we often talk about for looking at my pictures, that reads those same keywords. So those keywords that I added on import, will stay with the file and be on there when it goes into Lightroom. So, and when it goes on, online and everything like that. So it's a very valuable thing to do, not just for making your pictures easy to find in Lightroom, but actually for their life beyond Lightroom when they get out there into the wider world.
Yeah, it's not very sexy, but keywording is I think probably one of the most underrated tasks that we need to do.
Yeah, but it is a task. It is a pain, and so I have a rule with myself that after a trip, you always come back from a trip, you want to share your pictures on social media. I have a rule with myself that I'm not allowed to share anything from a trip on social media because I want to, share some shots and so I'm motivated until that picture has been keyworded.
Yep.
And until that picture has been processed properly.
Yep.
So, I'll have made sure I've identified the species in the picture, and then I'll, have added those names to it, and then I'll process it properly at high res. The reason I do that is in the old days, I would come back from the trip and I would quick and dirty process pictures, share them online, be really excited about them. And then, a month later, some, magazine would ring up and say, oh, we saw your picture, or email, and, we saw your picture online. Can we use it? And I'm like, oh, bug, I've got to process it now. Yep. So, I realized that I was basically processing everything twice.
Yep.
So much better to process it once. And so that keywording task is a task, but I make sure that I do it before I get the reward of sharing the picture.
It's a slight aside, but one of the interesting things, of course, about sharing images is that Facebook and Instagram largely strip your keywords out of the metadata. So, and this is where, adding hashtags or adding tags into the images within your posts can be a way of replenishing that. But important to remember, you can't search social media, so I'm going to call it that, using keywords. You won't get anything. Which is a bit of a pain, actually, but there you go.
But on photography gallery pages, those things tend to be kept
absolutely.
And actually, a lot of the gallery software actually does use that information, both the description and that stuff. And you may have noticed actually some of the software will actually read that,
Yep.
as well
Yep.
when you upload it. So you see, it will say, please enter a caption, but actually if you've got one in the image,
It brings
it
it up.
actually automatically takes it up there.
It does, yeah. That's wonderful, Alex. I mean, I think that's a timeless reminder. Now we're out shooting a bit more. It's something that we need to do. If you want to see the practical power of keywords, I think Alex's website's a really, really good place to do it. So, amuster.com, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it's and you'll see under the picture the keywords that I've added. And actually, on my website, if you click on any of those keywords, it'll bring up all the other pictures with that shared keyword. Which is can be really useful for underwater stuff. As an underwater photographer, I don't use the term underwater as a keyword, although that often gets added by my libraries. I mean, it would be stupid for me because obviously all my pictures would be underwater. So, but so generally, my keywords are limited to destination, sort of factual descriptors. So destination, location, and subject matter keywords.
Yep, no, that's great. And obviously the goal here is that those award-winning photos that you've put somewhere but you can't find, this will help you to find them again. So thank you very much, Alex. And thanks again to Backscatter for sponsoring this episode. We really appreciate their support. Thank you to you all for watching. Please feel free to add any comments or possibly to have a chat about how you manage file naming, keywording, folder naming, so on and so forth in the comment section, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.